Hey guys, Matthew here once again, and for today's build showcase and the thing I've been doing for the past few days, I've got a bit of a dumb, crazy one, and it's not something I would normally play, so it was basically a suggestion from a viewer who's been doing a build like this on hardcore, and it sounded intriguing enough that I thought I'd give it a shot of my own on softcore as well, and it is Scourge arrow traps. So I haven't actually thrown traps, I don't think, for maybe a couple of years, something like that. Doesn't really fit with my playstyle too much, and this still kind of confirms it. It didn't feel great for me to play, but it is a very good build, and for anyone that likes trapping, this is going to be probably one of the more insane ones out there, I would think. So the idea here is that you attach the transfigured Scourge arrow, which isn't a channel, so it's just a pure attack that shoots out arrows on a blind prophet that gives you a lot of base crit. It gives you 50% of your prodges are returned, so that's why there's a whole bunch of crazy mess on the screen. You get a couple extra proj, and then you also get Abyssal Jewel life and mana. So then you stack Abyssal Jewels, you use a Shroud of the Lightless, and you get a lot of flat damage from all those jewels. You get a lot of penetration, you get a lot of life and mana percent, and it's also extremely easy to cap crit on your character with that 12 base crit. It's been a very good character for Ultimatum. It's been a very good character for pretty much most bossing with big open arenas like the Maven ones. Your return proj, especially with Sniper's Mark, just kind of go all over the screen and indiscriminately destroy everything, which is kind of why I don't particularly love the playstyle. It's just a lot of stutter stepping and a lot of throwing traps basically anywhere, and your gameplay is not super impactful. Like, you pretty much have to just worry about dodging a few things here or there, but just throwing traps anywhere, more or less, and just destroying everything. It's not really how I like to play the game personally, so it's a build that got to level 94 and cleaned up most endgame pretty seamlessly within 19 hours. It's a pretty fast build to get through all that kind of content, and it's just very strong for what it does for most kinds of content. It doesn't enjoy more closed in maps choke points and various tunnels and stuff, but for example here, this Pit of Chimera, big open area with lots of return proj and snipers marking and stuff. It is probably the fastest Chimera kill I've ever had, because all the monsters that spawn for the gates just immediately die, and the phases just go straight to the next one, straight to the next one. It's pretty crazy. So the build itself is probably even better if you have a higher budget with something like a Nimis, because then instead of 50% proj, you have a guaranteed proj return, and that becomes pretty crazy. But the main thing to focus on here is some proj speed, so that when you're shooting out a lot of proj, it covers 2 or 3 screens worth of distance, and then comes back and shits all over anything standing in its way. And given that we are tri-elemental stacking, you can freeze everything, you shock everything for a decent amount, I mean, the ignite doesn't matter, but it's there as well. The interesting thing about this type of build and trapping bow stuff is your attack speed doesn't matter at all. Typically, you do care about attack speed in a bow build, so building with no attack speed in mind is something a little bit different, and not something I've ever really had to do. The other thing is that you probably can't really see anything most of the time. The default non-MTX is pretty clean, but it does still leave a lot on your screen. The purple MTX is probably the nicest for visibility overall. It doesn't really, a lot of the time, even show up a lot of the arrows, I don't think. And then, of course, if you go to the Celestial, it becomes the worst screen cancer ever, and you basically can't see anything anymore at that point. And I play around with all of them, but yeah, it just depends on what you want to do and how much you want to see. We did farm some tier 17s as well, and that was even XP retention and XP gain, because you can do most map mods as a trapping build. Of course, there's still lots of cancer tier 17 map mods, but in general, you can do pretty much all kinds with just a bit more safer gameplay. So it's a pretty overall well-rounded character. It has 100%, almost 100% suppressed. Sorry, not 100%. It's got a decent amount of evasion, some ghost shrouds. It's got really good damage. The playstyle is pretty solid, and it can do bossing, it can do mapping, like clearing pretty well. Just want to focus on certain types of maps, but it does let you focus on almost any league mechanic you like. And yeah, in this case, I did try Ultimatum for the first time because it's fairly damn good for that, and it Ultimatum seemingly is fairly rewarding as well. I got a good few divines just from farming one day. Otherwise, yep, did a few invites like the Feared here, did all the four ways, pretty much all the five ways and stuff, and it cleans those up really quick. And then it also led me to my first Uber for the league. This is the first one I've actually got fragments for, which is the Uber Cortex. And yeah, look, I took a death, but overall it went pretty well. And I do think it can take on more Ubers. Probably not the best for Uber fighting, but maybe it's good for some of the others. I didn't really get a chance to try because I don't have the other fragments, and I just like to farm the fragments myself. So Scourge arrow traps, very potent build. Let me go ahead and show you how I built it, and also show off the guy's profile that suggested the build to begin with. So here's my character, level 94, blind prophet, abysmal bitrate. So abyssal stacking, 0 bitrate gaming, because there's just so many proj and stuff all over the screen. And the main thing you might be thinking, it's tough to overcome like the blind because it's 20% less accuracy and evasion. And it does suck while leveling, but once you get to like a high enough level, you can use your Pantheon to just get rid of it easily. There are a few other ways to do it. Otherwise, you can brute force overcome just more accuracy and bigger evasion, and that's fine too. But just taking the Pantheon does help a lot with the blind. Other than that, it's a very powerful ascendancy. The base crit of everything being 12 is absolutely nutty, especially because most of the base crit on like bows to begin with isn't terrific. Mine accidentally has crit anyway, so it helped out on its own a bit. But then the 12 crit just means that you can really overcap crit pretty easily through a lot of passives on the tree and various things. 50% chance to return to you and fired in random directions. So because it's fired in random directions, it does help that you have a bajillion projectiles going everywhere. And then we have 2 additional proj, which gives us even more Scourge Arrow bullshittery. And then Abyss stacking gives us extra life and mana, which stacks with Shrouded Lightless, so you can become a pretty well-rounded build indeed. So the guy that suggested I play this is level 99, I guess, at this point in hardcore. And this is a hardcore version if you want to look at how he approached it. Basically just told me that, yep, do some Scourge Arrow traps. It's very good. And you can do some ultimatum with it. And that had me intrigued because I had yet to do any ultimatum. And I typically don't like doing it because it isn't very comfortable for the modifiers that it usually throws at you, and it's still not super comfortable, but it's one of the better builds that I've done for Ultimatum. So it was been a good bit of fun doing that. So yeah, it's pretty typical, just Abyss stack, try and make sure you're getting a lot of flat damage everywhere. Basically just made a search for flat damage and just picked from some of the best stuff out there. Each jewel individually is anywhere from about 50C to 1 divine. There's, maybe a bit higher on the price end if you really want to go a bit higher, but for the most part, we don't really need to go higher than a divine. So you're just getting a bunch of flat damage, and you don't have to care about attack speed. Crit multi, another decent option, but most of it just comes from the tree and then also the gem, so we don't really need too much more. And then, yeah, I crafted all this stuff myself, grabbed a solarine bow and just spammed essences. Deafening essences are like super cheap, like 1-to-1 for chaos, so you can just spam away for everything. You do ideally want additional proj, but I didn't get that far. And yeah, this is my bow. It's not too crazy. Likewise with the quiver, just grabbed a proj speed quiver with proj speed implicit and was going for additional arrow. Did land it a few times, got greedy and kept rolling over for a bigger and better one. And in the end, it's just a pretty basic quiver, but proj speed is king here since it lets us do more screen clear, and it gets pretty crazy because of that. But we also scale proj speed off of the mastery. over here, so it does give us extra damage as well. But yeah, otherwise just abyssal stacking gear. You know, you've seen it before from this channel plenty of times. One of my favorite ways to build a character for damage. We then grabbed, I think these were 1 or 2 divines for the fracture, and then just keep rolling chaos harvest. Once again, very cheap as well at the moment. 15,000 to 1 for life force on the divine, and then just keep rolling chaos till some good stuff happens. Likewise with that one, so that's how we fixed a lot of our chaos res and stuff. And then I just reused an amulet from a previous build. So the main other thing that we're using is Sunblast. So it basically means that you don't actually trigger your traps off enemies at all. They don't interact with it anymore. Instead, it just reduces your trap duration. So to begin with, trap duration is supposed to be 4 seconds, but that takes it down to 1 second. So it does create a bit of a different playstyle where you have to make sure you're throwing things ahead of you and setting things up before things show up. So you can't really justify like running into a pack of mobs and then doing a trap and just waiting, because it kind of sucks. So you have to constantly be stutter stepping, and that's part of the stuff I don't really like with the traps. But it is there to mean that you should throw 2 additional traps every time, so you don't have to use multi-trap, and that's the biggest reason for doing it. As well as that, you get to pre-fire against a boss and stuff, and just have things going crazy before the boss even shows up without actually triggering off of the boss. But you can go the other route as well if you really want to and not use Sunblast. That's fine. I think this is just probably the strongest option for this kind of build though. So our links here are Scourge Arrow of Menace, then we've got Greater Volley. Doesn't matter if it's Volley or GMP, so the lesser damage option is the winner. We have crit damage, we have early damage with attacks, trap support, and trap and mine support. I am using Purity of Elements, Grace, and Precision. And then we can also still utilize a Mana Forged Arrow setup, even as a Trapper. So you got to be careful not to die to Reflect with this one. So for Reflect maps, you probably just want to take that out. But for the Mana Forge setup, we have Frenzy and Ensnaring Arrow. I did have a Power Charge on crit when I still needed crit, but at this point I have too much crit, so it doesn't matter. Don't need that anymore. And then the passive tree is just still pretty typical bow tree, I think, but also taking some trap nodes, and then a couple of clusters that just give us some early damage, and then even more abyssal jewels. So in the end, we have a lot of abyssal jewels, and it gives us a lot of percent life, a lot of percent mana, and yeah, you can kind of fit whatever you want into those. We can still do like a brutal restraint or a lethal pride if you got the funds for that, but that was just not really too realistic on this event at the moment, and just more abyssal sound fun anyway. So as far as the MTX, just what a Shroud of Lightless looks, some random shit, and then just Divergent character effect, as always, making things look nice. So it should still be possible to do this kind of build, not even in this event. It's just, Blind Prophet gives you a lot of good tools for it. But yeah, with a higher budget, it's probably pretty good for just a regular event as well, maybe even as a saboteur. And of course, enemies would go a long way to making things even bigger. But if it's a regular event, not Blind Prophet wise, you don't necessarily have to do Shroud of Lightless. Probably just stack early damage, or you can even probably do a poison variant. Maybe just a deck stack variant. Who knows? World is your oyster. All that we're really showing here is Scourge Traps. Pretty damn good combo and a good sort of setup for overall general gameplay. So if you like traps, there you go. If you don't, which I didn't particularly, it's a still fun enough build, but not really to my playstyle. Very strong build though. Can highly recommend it. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.